So between combat jiu-jitsu, Medusa, and the Who's Number One, I actually went to Texas to do the Nogi Worlds. And then so that was between the two events. And then, but in the week so Medusa and the Nogi Worlds were 1 week apart exactly. And I actually got food poisoning like 2 days out from Nogi Worlds.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Esparza, coming to you with another episode of Grappling Hour. So here's some good news. We have an interview with Brianna Ste-Marie. Bad news. We kind of recorded this before the ADCC trials. Now, it's not going to take you long to figure that out. She kept winning and was having this amazing streak. We were trying to make an interview happen. Her schedule's busy, my schedule's busy, and when we finally got around to doing it, I said, hey, congratulations, go enjoy ADCC Trials. We did our marathon stream, and then she won again. And I know we're making the invitation so that everybody can come back and do interviews. However, just because we recorded this right before we went into that, I told her and I said, hey, would love to bring you back. Let me air this one first, and then we'll circle back around for the next thing that you win, which, if you've seen her trajectory, it means we'll probably talk to her in like 2 weeks. Either way, I had a great time talking with her about her experiences at Who's Number One and at Medusa, and I think those are two really important competitions that not only help to get her in the right competition mindset, but that were prominent events in their own right. So we love Brianna Ste-Marie. We think the world of her. She's an amazing competitor, and I think that you'll like this conversation. So let's not hesitate anymore. Let's get straight to that interview with our friend, Brianna Ste-Marie. You know, good guests are sometimes hard to book, and it's no fault of their own. It's just they're busy. And when they're busy, sometimes you've got to do your best to arrange schedules and go back and forth. And it's not that the guest, because there are different guests who will do the runaround because they just don't want to be on the show. But this is a guest who's been on our show before, and she was great. The problem was, after she won Medusa, the very first Medusa on the combat jiu-jitsu side, she said, hey, I'm like busy right now. And lo and behold, she had to go out and win at Who's Number One. So when you get somebody who is able to win those two things and then is able to give you some time, you take advantage of those moments. But we are so happy to welcome back and truly spectacular athlete back to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, Brianna Ste-Marie. Brianna, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me and for being patient with me, giving you the runaround for a couple of weeks. As you were just mentioning, it was a busy month for me, but I'm happy to be here.
I don't think you were doing it purposely to make me feel bad. So I try not to take it personally, but especially when something big happens like a Medusa, I go, oh, well, I had booked Fatima, and it's not like I have an issue with you. So I go, I'm going to make sure I reach out to both of you. And then when I see that you're in the process of doing other events, I'm like, no, I know she'll get back to me. But I try to follow a very polite form of, I would like to just follow up. And you're like, hey, something else is coming up. And that's when they put you on the Who's Number One card as well. And good news, great results both ways. So I have no issue because now we can talk and catch up.
That's it. Now we can hash out both events instead of just one.
Absolutely. So let's start with this. Can you tell me how you got the call for Medusa and how did that all come together?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I saw that Eddie had created Medusa. And then I sent them a message saying, like, let me know when you guys have your first event. I'm definitely interested. And then a few months later, they released that they were doing a combat jiu-jitsu bracket at 135. And I messaged Eddie right away, and I was like, can you put me in for that bracket? I was super excited because I hate cutting to 125. I hate dieting. So to me, it was like this really cool opportunity to do the combat jiu-jitsu again, but this time at 135. And obviously the opportunity to maybe have the two belts, which was really cool.
When you do get contacted back by him, though, what is that response like? Because you're obviously one of those people who has to be on their radar, but when you volunteer for it, what was the response back like?
Yeah, sorry, you cut off at the beginning there, but I think if I understood correctly, you're just asking me what the response was when I asked to be on the show.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, no, it was great. Eddie right away told me, he was like, "Hell yeah, you're in," and I was super pumped. And then actually, I think like 2 weeks after I'd asked Eddie to be on the show, he announced that like Bia Mosquito was going to be in the bracket, and then I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy I sent Eddie a message," because like just having someone like Bia obviously in the bracket, an opportunity to we didn't end up facing off, but just to like kind of show the caliber of what the bracket was looking like, you know.
Yeah, for you, I mean, for anybody, she's an amazing competitor. You're somebody who likes to go to those challenges, and sometimes, you may not get those matches just offhand. So if they're dangling that carrot, I know you're going
Yeah.
to take that bout. So I have to say, that is a pretty good way to go ahead and do that. And especially, like you mentioned, the thought and the appeal of a double belt is something that I'm sure motivates you to go a little bit harder and really come back with guns blazing. So, what does the camp look like now that you had already done the experience before? Like, how was it like getting prepared this time rather than the last time?
So I mean, the timing of the event actually worked out quite well, because my teammate, I was going to Abu Dhabi with my teammate who was fighting in MMA, and I was going as her like training partner. So that was in beginning of September. So we spent a week in Abu Dhabi, and I just did the whole camp with her. So I mean, I was obviously she was the priority, but I was doing a lot of kind of ground and pound work and grappling with strikes. And then I came back and I had about 3 weeks to do kind of a camp to prepare for the Medusa specifically. But just coming from kind of being exposed to that world of MMA for a few weeks, helping my friend prepare for her fight was definitely super helpful. And then I did just the usual, I go heavy into the conditioning. I want to make sure that cardio is not an issue. There's nothing worse than feeling like you gas out. So I always put a focus on cardio before I go for an event. And then beyond that, just like rolling with the slaps for sure. Yeah.
Is there pressure at this point on yourself to replicate those results? Because I know you mentioned the thrill of getting two belts, but people also have to be looking to you, maybe not a favorite or sleeping on you, but if they're not giving you a favorite, you have to be the favorite because you're somebody who has experience winning that tournament before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I never really know because like I think sometimes I get overlooked a little. I'm just like some random chick from Canada, so sometimes like just for like who's number one, I was the underdog in the fight, and I mean it's got to the point where like I know that I'm good and I'm capable. So sometimes I don't know if I'm the favorite going into an event or not, and I wasn't sure what people were expecting from me in the combat jiu-jitsu at 135. Maybe they thought the 125 was just like a fluke or something. So I don't know if that's true or not. Just I feel that sometimes I can get overlooked in a bracket. So I was happy to really come out and just show that the first time around it wasn't I didn't win for nothing, and that I could demonstrate my dominance again and also win kind of in a different way too. Like I last time I submitted everyone from closed guard or like off closed guard exchanges, and this time I played top a lot, which was cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, listen, I don't ever want to take away your close guard game because you had one of the most active close guards that I've seen. So I'm all for growth, but I was also like, oh, right. She should do whatever she wants. Like, I guess if I were a coach with you, my game plan would be like, what do you feel like? Because I would feel a good sense of, I think you can handle most things. So hearing you say, yeah, I got to play top, it was cool, is like some people just can't even get to top. So it is a very good position to be in for a tournament like that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that. Like I said before we started the interview, I wasn't anticipating using the strikes as much. I had practiced like where to place them from the top strategically, but then I remember in my first match, April, she had pulled guard on me, and she was actually. I thought, okay, if someone's gonna pull guard, they're not gonna be super heavy on the strikes. But she actually pulled guard and then stayed seated and then was just like wailing them. And then I actually was surprised by how hard she could hit, like from a seated guard position. And then I kept on just trying to pass. But every time I would try to pass, I would just eat like a big slap to the face. And I was getting like, I was feeling a little heavy headed. And then finally I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like every time I even try to pass, she's just like knocking me one. And then I was like, okay, I have to get myself respected. So I just kind of sat myself on her butterfly hooks and just gave her a few myself. And then I think that just like opened the floodgates. And then for the next like 3 matches, like especially the first and the last one, I just like was using the strikes way more than I anticipated. And almost getting TKOs. Like the ref was warning them that they had to protect themselves, otherwise he was going to stop the fight. Which I just like, if you told me that before the tournament, I wouldn't have thought that at all.
And I'll tell you exactly what I told you off air, which is sometimes when people do these combat jiu-jitsu matches, they get that feeling of, oh, I don't want to slap. It just seems wrong. They get that one first slap in and they go, I've never realized how much power this has. I'm never going back. So I think
that's exactly how I felt.
I think that you adjust well to it. It's just, I could see that at a certain point you kind of look, I think some people have this look every once in a while, which is, how dare you hit me? Oh,
yes.
Oh, no, don't you dare hit me. And then you remember, oh, right, I'm about to slap you back right now and it's not going to be pleasant. So I totally understand and get that. You're kind of mentioning a little bit of the match order. So I actually think this is a good time to maybe go in that order. You start with April Parks. You are able to get the rear naked choke. What can you tell me that you remember specifically about that match?
That was a super challenging match, actually. So the one I just mentioned, so she was coming in like really hard with the slaps at the beginning, and I was very surprised because I didn't anticipate someone to pull guard and be hungry for the slaps. I thought if someone wants to work ground and pound, they're going to be trying to be on top. So I was just really surprised by that. And then I just remember I ate quite a few slaps, and my nose started bleeding. And I just felt a little bit disoriented, and especially first match, you're like really high on adrenaline and you're kind of already can sometimes have tunnel vision. So I just felt like a bit overwhelmed. But then I gave a few slaps myself and that kind of helped like ground me a little, I guess. And then I was able to start working the guard pass. And then I think I passed the mount and then I was just going hard on the slaps. I mean, obviously, when you're using like the heel of your hand, it can be quite effective. And then the ref warned me that he was going to stop the fight. And then she kind of turned away when he said that. So then I went for that rear naked choke. But it was a super intense fight, which was like a kind of a nice way to start the tournament, I guess, like now looking back at it.
I have to ask this, though.
Yeah.
Was there a part of you that wanted the stoppage more? Or are you at this point more like, no, I'm just fine getting this rear naked choke?
I mean, I'll definitely be honest and say that like it would have been kind of cool in a way just to kind of go home because most of my teammates are MMA fighters, and I think it would have been really funny if I could go home and be like, I won by TKO because I'm kind of like the last one standing who like refuses to do MMA. But if I went home and like won by TKO, it'd be pretty funny. So I'm a little sad that I didn't get the TKO finish.
Again, I'm not somebody who's ever been in this situation because, I mean, if I am training combat, with my training partners, and I've had several who have competed in this format, it is always strange because I've taken some slaps and been like, why do people do this? This is the silliest, dumbest thing. But when I've seen one of our friends get a stoppage by TKO and slaps, it's always made me go, I mean, that's kind of cool. Like, that not only was your jiu-jitsu so good, but that you slapped this person so hard, someone stepped in to say, I think we're good here. Like, that to a certain kind of jiu-jitsu practitioner, not only is it bragging rights, but it is a certain element of, hey, listen, this is not a gentle art, you dicks. This is aggressive, okay?
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that, and you kind of touched on it briefly before, but there is kind of like a more emotional aspect when you kind of add strikes into the mix, and that's something too. Like someone's literally hitting you in the face, so I never get really upset ever when I roll in jiu-jitsu, but then you add the slaps in, and like you do kind of get like a bit more like emotional, like you can kind of get upset sometimes. And then they hit you, and sometimes it's not the right thing for you to do to hit them back. but you stop thinking about the right thing. You're like, oh, they hit me in the face. Now I have to hit them in the face, even if that's not the right thing for you in that moment, you know? So it's definitely like, yeah. And then, and then once there's been a few slaps exchanged, you do kind of get in the zone of like, okay, I'm going to keep hitting them. I want to keep hitting them until I win, but it's like not, sometimes it works against you. Sometimes it works for you, it depends.
I will tell you this right now. There is a segment that we filmed with a notable jiu-jitsu artist, and it's a comedy bit, and it's a recurring segment we have on the show. And they weren't being very successful, so they went to their wheelhouse of slaps. So I'm not going to tell you who, but they do have a belt, and I'll let you know that if the bit wasn't that I couldn't fight back, I might have hit them back as well. But comedically, I went back, and every time I look at that footage, because we haven't aired it yet, and it's coming up, but every time I look at that footage, you see my reaction in terms of emotion. I just turned into the Joker. Like, I just started laughing. And it's like a hysterical laugh of like, I can't believe you're slapping me. Like, what is happening here? Anyway, that's for another time. But I just wanted to preview it for people here.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it definitely surprised me. I'll tell you guys that much. All right. So again, a good sort of start to your day, as you mentioned. Let's go to the second match. The second match that you had was against Sophia. What was this matchup's feel on your perspective?
So going into the combat jiu-jitsu, it's usually like a mix of, in the brackets, like of MMA fighters and people who are like more jiu-jitsu based. I have to say that on the whole, I'm more nervous to fight people with like a jiu-jitsu background, just because I feel that my strength is obviously jiu-jitsu. It's not going to be in the striking domain. So then, against someone who like splits their time and does MMA, then I feel like I should have an advantage in like pure jiu-jitsu. And I feel like, okay, my strategy is going to be use my like advanced grappling knowledge to beat them. But then when I'm fighting someone who's like pure jiu-jitsu, well, then I think, oh no, their advantages are the same as mine. So I'm actually like more nervous for those matches. And I definitely felt that against Sophia, because I had seen her like fight, on the black belt scene, and I'd seen her like win some nice matches. I saw she had like nice leg locks. So I was definitely nervous going into the match. But at the same time, I kind of knew that I would probably end up fighting her. And then, I just actually timed well. She went to go pull guard, and then I jumped guard at the same time. And I have to say, like, from the close guard, I feel usually pretty confident to have things go my way. And I was able to cinch in the triangle pretty early on in the match. So it was cool. So I kind of, imposed my game instead of playing into hers.
And that's got to feel pretty good, especially when you know that once you get this match won, and in a good amount of time, that you've got a little bit of time before you get to the finals. So now you know how the rest of your day is going to start to play out. You know that you're only got one more to win. Are you watching your competition at this point? Are you kind of standing back? Do you just go into a zone? Do you just go all the way in back? What does that work like for you?
It's hard. It's like, because part of me like wants to watch, but then I also don't want to get like see something that's going to psych me out. Like, if I watch my opponent's semifinal and she does this like epic submission in the first like 30 seconds, then maybe I'm watching that being like, and that's going to like affect me and psych me out. So I do this weird thing where I kind of like watch out of my peripherals, I don't like over focus, like, and then like if I see like a little flurry of movement, maybe I'll like take a peek, but like I'm trying not to like hyper focus on them. But I can't ignore them completely either. Because at the same time, I do want to know, let's say she is hitting that really sick submission in the first 30 seconds. If she has like a surprise flying go-go plata, like I want to know about it so I don't walk into it too,
It's so hard because, and maybe this is where I relate to it the most, I feel like I'm not doing my homework if I'm not observing them. But I think for certain athletes, you have to cut yourself off. I think you just at a certain point go, all right, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And what is conditionally happening with this person may not happen with me. So I may just go into a weird place. But for me personally, I tell some of my guys, I say, I'll watch for you. You go do your thing. And if there's a report I need to get back to, I'm going to be like, So we're not going guard with this person. Figure out what you need to do. And then I just kind of let them do their thing. And I really try to do it with respect to their abilities and whatnot. But yeah, I feel that that makes sense. So let me ask this, because before we get to the finals, I want to ask, what does the environment feel like here? Because again, this is happening in Mexico, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So was there any process for you getting there, because you come from the Canada, and the last time we talked about this, you essentially had to quarantine, you had to figure out your travel and all that sort of stuff. Was that as big of a problem this time? Or were you able to curb some of those things?
Yeah, the travel was quite straightforward this time, especially with Mexico. Dealing with the states after and coming back to Canada is always more complicated. But going to Mexico is super simple. I purposely made sure I was double vaxxed before, because I knew in October, because I already had COVID, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to get vaccinated or not. But then I had like all these tournaments lined up in October, and I thought, man, I just don't want to take the risk that I just get caught somewhere and I have to quarantine and then I don't make it back out. And they were all opportunities I didn't want to miss. But with the two vaccines, it was pretty simple to travel, thankfully. In Mexico, no problem. And then coming back to Canada, you just need to get like a PCR test, which is expensive and frustrating for that on that side of things, especially when you're traveling to make money, to earn money, and then you have to pay. Like in Texas, when I wanted to come home, the PCR test was like $200 US, and that's so shitty. Like you're there, I'm traveling to work, in essence, I'm getting paid for these events, and then I'm giving like a percentage of my purse just for this like test, even though I'm technically like now 3 times vaccinated. I've caught COVID and I'm double vaccinated.
Wow.
Anyways, I don't want to turn it into COVID because everything's about COVID. But in general, it was more simple.
Okay. Having said all of that, though, in terms of your body, your wear and tear on this one, do you feel, though, that because of the travel and the less, the quarantine and all that sort of stuff, the simplification of it all, do you feel like as you're going into the finals, like healthy? Do you feel fine? Because I worry about that other external stuff from a logistic standpoint, and that I thought it was impressive when you did it the last time. This time, part of me is wondering, like, oh, does that make a factor at all? Or are you just so hyper in an adrenaline sort of daze that you go, I don't even care, I'm just trying to win this thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely what you just said there with the adrenaline is definitely a factor. Like, I find like I have various injuries, just like as anyone does who trains like full time. And then traveling is always like hard on the body. But honestly, the second like the adrenaline hits, it's like, that injury that's been hurting you for like 6 months, like, for the next like 3 hours, you're not going to feel anything, you're just like good to go. And obviously, in the end, if you look at your performance as a whole, maybe you could perform like less well, it's possible. But for sure, in terms of like you actually like thinking about any kind of ailment in the moment, like I find it just doesn't happen. You're like, okay, well, even actually, so between combat jiu-jitsu, Medusa, and the Who's Number One, I actually went to Texas to do the Nogi Worlds. And then so that was between the two events. And then, but in the week that was, so Medusa and the Nogi Worlds were 1 week apart exactly. And I actually got food poisoning like 2 days out from Nogi Worlds. And I was like super down. Yeah, it was a total shit show. Like I was puking like for like 16 hours and I couldn't eat anything after the next day. And then the day after that, it was the Nogi Worlds. And the first match I felt like horrible. But then after that, I mean, like the adrenaline just kicked in. And for the rest of the day, I felt fine. But then like the Saturday after, I just like died.
Oh my God.
Anyways, all this to say, adrenaline can save you, but like then your body still crashes afterwards.
So next week for the trials, we'll be doing marathon broadcasts. So I'll be watching along, and we'll do like a fight companion for that.
Oh,
now,
nice.
It's not physical, but because I'm on the air for as long as the event goes, and now that they decided, hey, guess what? Let's do 2 days. I was telling people, I go, it's like I'm getting ready for a talking marathon.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing it, people are like, are you hungry? Do you do this? I'm like, I get very, let's just go, go, go.
Yeah.
And then maybe that Monday after the event, my wife will see me and just look at me like, are you okay? And I'll go, ugh,
No.
I just want to be in the bed. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to look at anything. And I sympathize because that adrenaline can make you do amazing things. But then sometimes I think the body has to remind you, like, we suggest you don't do this a lot.
That's it. That's it. Either like they're gonna take that tax later on, Your body doesn't forget. Right? It's like, I'll help you out this time, but like on Monday, like you better fucking watch it.
Oh, absolutely. It's, you can't get too foolish about it and be like, I'm gonna live forever, I'm gonna do this forever. And then all of a sudden you just plop right into the ground. Having
That's
said
it.
that though, I need to understand more about this food poisoning before we go to that finals match. Because as you were explaining to me, it was that you were not doing a competition really for 6 months. And then this all happens, and No Gi Worlds is supposed to be the first of several things. So when that happens, are you worried about how it's all going to transgress? Like, are you worried about like, man, is this going to throw me off from my next couple events? Like, I'm pretty sure logically, it should pass. But I also know what happens when you're in the moment and you're thinking like, ah, shit, not now, not right this second.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely like felt I had a little pity party. I'm not gonna lie, a little as I was on the toilet bowl, a few tears rolled down my cheek. But I think honestly, like it's because after the No-Gi Worlds, it was going to be the Who's Number One, and Who's Number One I had to cut to 125, which is like the lowest weight that I fight at. And so you would think like the food poisoning is like, oh, that's good for the weight cut. But it is and it isn't because, when you're trying to cut weight, you want to be eating specific things. Like I personally, I cut out carbs from my diet. But then when you get sick, like all you want is like white bread and like white rice and like you don't want anything else. You want Gatorade, you want sugar. So and obviously in the end you'll have to focus on getting your body better. So it took me a while before I could like get back on my proper weight cut diet. Like so it kind of like honestly for the weight cut, it just felt that my body, and then also to deprive your body after you just like got over a sickness is like also terrible. Like to be on a calorie deficit when you just like were like super sick and competed while sick, and then to come back from that and be like, okay, now I have to lose another 10 pounds, it like wasn't optimal. And I think I've definitely like felt better during other weight cuts than this one here that I did for Who's Number One. But I mean, in the end, you just like kind of get through it and you hope that adrenaline we talked about is going to kick in.
Understood. I mean, it's kind of like holding out hope there's going to be a box that you can hit and an invisible star is going to jump out of it and you go, oh, I need this right now. So it's definitely, it's part of gamble. But I think there's this never-ending optimism that happens for athletes where they just go into their place and they go, it's just going to work out. I don't know how.
Yes.
It's just going to figure itself out or it's not. And I'm willing to bet it'll be fine. And again, it did work out fine. But now that we're getting towards the finals of this event, I guess my question was more apt. I was shooting at a dartboard not knowing what I was going for there in terms of, I don't know. I don't know if the travel has any implications for you. And you told me you get food poisoning. And a couple weeks later, here you are in the finals of Medusa looking to go for that second belt. So describe to me what is happening because you have a very game competitor and I have the utmost respect for both of you. So do you mind taking us through that match?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I was super excited to be fighting Nikki. I've watched her like, at so many events. Like I think even when I like started jiu-jitsu, I remember seeing her in like the finals of like the first jiu-jitsu event I ever watched like on Flow Grappling was like the ADCC Trials. And I remember she was in the finals, I think against like Liz Clay in like 2015 or 16 or something. And that was like the first time I watched her fight. And I've just seen her kind of just through the circuit, like, always doing super well. So it's really cool to finally fight her. I mean, I knew her style was like, a lot of inversions, going for leg locks. I mean, my game is a lot like, forcing the half guard from top, pressure passing. Um, so I think I was able to like kind of just be heavy on top, and then I also like use some of the strikes too. I especially like with the combat jiu-jitsu, sometimes when she would invert, I just kind of like was like, oh well, her head is right here, not to be mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Hey, listen, that's what you get for inverting in combat jiu-jitsu. There are consequences.
That's it. But yeah, no, it was a super cool match, and it was really intense, and it went the distance. I was a little sad that I couldn't get the finish in regulation. I had a couple good attempts, but Nikki was super tough and managed to get out. And then going into the overtime, I think we were both pretty tired, and but I don't know, I just felt like it was mine, and I practiced the overtime so much, and it was like my first time kind of getting to test it out. And I was just like really happy that I put in those hours doing the EBI overtime, and that I didn't go in there thinking like, oh fuck, what if I dominate the whole match and I lose in overtime? Like I went into the overtime being like, I'm winning this overtime, like I put in the hours. I'm like, this is just the same as the match, So I was happy that I dedicated the time and training to that.
That's pretty dope. I have to remind myself because I have to go back and double check these, but this is the first time that you've gone to EBI overtime in this realm. Have you done other competitions where you've had to do EBI overtime in competition?
I did just one other one where I had to do EBI. It was like the same thing. I had 3 matches. My first 2 matches I won in regulation. The last one I went to EBI. There I won. I managed to finish the armbar, and then the girl couldn't tap me from the back. But that time I would say that I practiced it like significantly less, and I was like a lot more nervous going into the overtime. Like I was just like, I hope I win this, we'll see. Versus this time going into the overtime, I was like, no, okay, I got this,
Yeah, I've worked with people who are maybe a couple weeks or maybe a month out from a EBI overtime competition, and nothing cuts me to my core quite like, oh, I've never done that before. Or when I asked one of my friends, he had a competition 6 weeks out, and I said, oh, have you done EBI overtime? And they said, what? I go, oh God, okay, we got 6 weeks. That's enough time, I think. And okay, we're gonna start in Spider. We're gonna then work to back. There's some cheat codes. Because all you ever think of is there are people who train just that, especially within the 10th planet system, because they know it's coming. So for you, you had the fortunateness of, in your previous experience, just submitting everybody and saying, I don't need to worry about that. But in this case, it's a very high profile competition. Pressure's on, and now you need to deliver. And you did. And I think a good part of that is you come into it, from what it seems, with a really good mentality of, no. This is not going to be something I lose. I'm just going to win it. I'm confident in my preparation. When you say that you've been preparing for it, how long had you dedicated toward working just on the EBI overtime?
I mean, like in the, the camp that I did before, like, so let's say I was preparing for the event like 5 weeks out. And it's just like every training session, it's like you do something I like to do a lot was that, because usually when you're doing the EBI overtime, you've just done a 10-minute match, right? So you're pretty tired. So sometimes, especially if it worked out perfectly, if there was like 3 of us, like me and 2 other people, I would just do like, okay, they each attack me once, and then they can do a round with each other. And while they're doing that, I would do something like, I would do ball slams, or I would do like, I don't know, like kettlebell swings or something that's like high intensity. So that way, and then when they would finish, and I would do that while they did their exchange. And then when their exchange was over, I would hop back in right away. And that way I'm like going into the EBI and I'm exhausted, which is like, I think a good simulation of what you encounter during the match. And then obviously I also before I used to just like take a chance with the armbar. Like I'd be like, oh, hold out and then like try to squirm out. But then I was like, okay, like fucking look up some technique, So I like obviously also spent a little time like researching, the best like armbar escapes. Back escape I was a bit more familiar with, at least. But Yeah, and then it was cool too because even in my rolls, I was like, man, I just spent like so much time doing back and armbar escape. I was like, even if it happens in regulation, like that's definitely a tool set that I could use, you know. So I was like, I was feeling a lot more confident in my rolls that if like something went sour, I was like starting to escape arm bars and rolls too, which is like it's silly, but it's like it's something that I used to be like, oh, if I get caught in an R, like 90% chance it's a tap. So it's really cool to start like escaping those even just during the rolls.
Okay. So you doing all of that extra cardio is a good reminder. Never train with you. Necessary. Like that's intense. I mean, listen, you're a competitor. Those extra things pay off. But man, that's a good way to keep yourself accountable. Honestly, just because it's hard to describe to people what overtime is without the adrenaline dump, because I feel like what the real conceit of overtime, in my opinion, and you can please tell me if I'm wrong, is that the adrenaline is you're competing, you're moving a lot. The EBI overtime is isolation. So then it becomes, there's not this rapid amount of movement. It's a sudden, you feel constrained, and then maybe a little adrenaline comes and it becomes a very focused, okay, problem solving situation. So is that something that is in line with your experience? Because you would know more than I would in that situation.
Yeah, I mean the overtime is like it's like a big dump of pressure, right? Because like you can like be like a master of your armbar finish, your armbar defense, your back finish, your back defense. But like for example, like I like to choose the armbar as like my tack, and it's like I know how to finish this armbar, but then all of a sudden it's just like the whole world just focuses in on this, like you said, like, it's like hyper focus, and it's not like getting an armbar during a roll where you like you just passed the guard and now you're in an armbar and you're just in the flow of things. It's like, no. You're going to start with that armbar, but then there's just going to be like an enormous weight on your shoulders of like pressure to just like perform the technique to just like perfection, right? Because they're going to be doing like they're ready to defend as best as they can. So there's something like very honest about it. And it's like, it's definitely like very stressful. And then you obviously don't want to like, the first armbar that I took on Nikki, like she slipped out like pretty fast. And then I was like, and we were super sweaty and I was like, oh my God. And then obviously I was like, did I choose the wrong thing? I was like, no, you've finished so many of these armbars in training, like have confidence. I like tried to wipe my arms off a little. And then going into the second one, I got the tap and I was like, okay, but it's like, man, you slip up a couple times just in the EBI overtime, the pressure kind of takes over. Well, then you've just lost the match,
Yep.
So it's definitely something special. At least I find it was stressful. Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel this way, but I certainly learned one thing about myself with arm bars with this isolation, which was I told people when I started training a little bit of the overtime, I go, I need a lot of momentum when I finish my arm bars. I didn't know how much I relied on momentum for me. Like normally I would use it as like a good passing mechanism that I'd be like, well, all right, screw it. You gave me an arm. Now I'm going to take it. When somebody said, oh, ref, you've got okay arm bars, finish it with this isolation. I'd be like, no problem. Go get your arm. No. Uh-oh. Do I know how to do arm bars? Have I been lying this whole time? So I understand where that is coming from. You did mention, though, when you did get tapped first, you did mention that you're able to stay focused. But you also mentioned that you have to have a belief in your arm bar. Was there ever a moment where you were going to switch to something else? Were you going to switch to the back ever in any kind of scenario?
I don't think so. Like I think the only scenario where I would have switched to the back would be if I extended someone's arm and I felt them like weirdly double jointed and like I felt like I had. And there's ways, obviously, when people are like have that, especially because I've fought girls before, where their elbow can come out the other side and they're like A-okay. And there are ways to still like get the break on them. But just because that's not something that like I get to practice that often, I don't have anyone in my gym like that. It's only in competition. So I think that would have been the only thing that would have made me switch to the back. Beyond that, I was definitely just going to stick to the arm. That's what I feel best at. And yeah, I mean, and the first time, the one that I lost in the first round, I felt that it was just like I mean, like, obviously, like, she escaped too, but I also feel like I felt where I made the mistake, you know? It's like, it wasn't like, oh, I have no idea how she escaped. It was like, no, I'm aware of what happened. It was just like a slip up. So going into the next one, like, I'm not there like, oh, she just blew through my armbar and I have no idea why, you know? So that also gave me confidence. I was like, okay, I know what went wrong, fix it, and you're good to go.
Okay. So with that being said, when you do end up getting the armbar in that overtime period, what goes through your head?
I mean, so what's great is that I had I think because I like did better in the match, I got to choose if I was like attacking or defending first. So I always choose attacking first because then if you get the submission, you just need to hold out, right? So I got the submission, I think in like 35 seconds or something. So then I knew I just had to like not get submitted. Um, so then that obviously gives you like a pretty big advantage, you know? You don't really have to like, I don't have to open up, I don't have to overexpose myself to escape, you know? So I was feeling pretty good at that point. I was like, I can do 35 seconds, you know? And then she actually switched and she chose the arm this time. The first time she chose the back. And then I just held out.
So we mentioned this the last time, and I wanted to ask if you got any good reactions from anybody when you know that you've won. But I know that one person in particular that you do get text from is your dad. So did that happen again? Was he the best text, or did somebody beat him this time in terms of a reaction to this event?
Well, I guess my dad wins just because, like, I get like a lot of nice texts, but then my dad is just funny because it'll just be something like a gorilla emoji and a thumbs up, you know, and like no words or actually like an hour later he'll just text me and he'll be like picture, you know, and nothing else. So you know, in terms of like being different from the flock, my dad always takes the cake. But yeah, I mean, just the usual suspects obviously all sent me like super nice messages, and then it's always nice to like, you know, you'll get messages being like, oh, I was, you know, greetings from Prague, like watched your match, like sick stuff, and I'm like, what? This is wild. So that was a cool text to get too. You know, people from across the world who you know give me a shout on Instagram saying that they were impressed by my jiu-jitsu, and like that's always really cool.
That's super dope, especially we find that on the show every once in a while where we forget that people download it in countries where you don't think they understand English. And then every so often they'll send us a note being like, you guys are my favorite show. And I go, how? We're not at all doing Russian comedy. Where is this coming from? So
yeah,
it is dope. You forget these things as they are happening. So things go well. You win that. Did you know you were going to be on Who's Number One? Because I was unfamiliar if you were going to be on that card before you were on the Medusa card, or was that something that happened after?
Yeah, so I think I got the message for Who's Number One back in like end of August. So I knew I was going to be on Who's Number One. Actually, that was like kind of like something that stressed me out because I don't usually like thinking about an event in the future. So like, and then I had Medusa and Who's Number One lined up, two things that I cared about a lot. So I just kept telling myself, I was like, don't even think about Who's Number One until you're done with Medusa, you know? But yeah, so I knew I was going to go on to Who's Number One afterwards.
Okay. That does help because as I sent a note out to you, which was, hey, come do my show, I didn't know you were on Who's Number One. And you sent, of the many people who I do try to contact, one of the nicer, like, hey, I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule this sort of a thing? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then I think maybe an hour later, I saw something from Flo being like, catch this week. And I go, oh,
that's why.
Yeah, I would not do my show either if I need to be this focused. And I'll tell you from my perspective, it's always a little risky when you do have that little break in between because everybody's on upper when they win. Mm-hmm. But if there's another contest, you go, well, I don't know how this will work if she does not win, because some guests will win one and totally forget it after the next week when they have a loss. You, however, decide to go overachieve and win again against a very game opponent as well in this. So tell me what that Who's Number One experience was like.
Oh man, it was very cool. Like I've been dying to get onto Who's Number One because I really like what they've been doing for like the jiu-jitsu scene. Like it's trying to become like a professional jiu-jitsu fighter is not the easiest thing, financially speaking. And they're just like offering like a lot of opportunity for the athletes. They do a lot in terms of like promoting the athletes. The events like always look super professional. They're always exciting. The rule set, I love the rule set. So I've just been dying to get onto Who's Number One. So that's when I got the call and they asked me to do it at 125, I was like, man, I don't care. I'll cut to any weight to be on the show, And it's also cool because it's like such an opportunity to like climb up the ranks. I just want to fight the best, and I really like that. Like it's kind of like kind of like UFC or just an MMA in general. Right? They have their rankings, and then if you do well, you can kind of climb your way up, call out people who are higher ranked than you. Not that I think I'll have the balls to call anyone out, but I'm hoping that they'll just offer things and then I'll accept. We'll do it like the maybe slightly more civilized way. But yeah, no, I just it was a really, and then going on it was kind of everything that I expected from being a spectator in the past. And it was like they treated the athletes super well. It was like a really well run show, and the event was exciting. The rule set brings out, I think, the best in athletes, and yeah, it was a super cool experience.
When you have an opponent, like I believe it's Brie, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Which, by the way, I'm sure is whoever's having to put the names up there has to be like, wait, did I put the right person with the right? Is that okay? Just wanted to make sure I'm spell checking all the names properly. With her, I just commentated a subversive that she was competing at. And one thing I noticed, she had so many things thrown at her in that competition. And she had this kind of unshakable resolve through most of it. And what I liked about you was you figured out that equation. You were able to do it in a way that I was like, yo, that's super impressive. I saw people struggling to really try and get a submission on her. And I saw that you were able to lock up the deal. So how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, like likewise, like I kind of watched, obviously her matches leading up to the event. And I saw her do super well against like, some people who I fought in the past or I know are like really good fighters. And like you said, I saw them struggling to pass her guard, to establish, and if they did pass, to keep the position, to lock anything concrete down. She was like super dexterous, really good at like always regarding, and then not only that, but like regarding and counterattacking right away, always on the offensive. So I definitely, had all that in my mind in the preparation. But I think that my style, like, I'm a lot more like shut down than a lot of people. A lot of people like to pass kind of very open. And I think that's like sometimes it can be like obviously like a really big strength, and it's something that, I need to work on personally. But at the same time, it also allows your opponent to kind of like, if, Bree seems to do really well in the scramble, do really well, so if someone's kind of just passing super open and aggressive, well, maybe that's what opens up the opportunity for her to counterattack. Versus my style is kind of just like slow everything down. I like to pressure pass. I like to kind of like, steamroll forward. And I think that worked well against her kind of more scrambly style.
That's a great strategy. And to hear you kind of put that in context makes it make all the more sense, because you're right. You give her enough space, she might be able to utilize that to her advantage, especially if she's able to create a scramble. But if you start containing it, and much like you were finishing with that triangle, like not only is it a good triangle on your part because your guard, awesome, but the threat that you add in of just attacking that arm is always like that beautiful extra insurance. So it was a very impressive finish. So as I saw it and I sat there, I go, well, selfishly, this is good business for me. But then unselfishly, I thought, what a great way to cap off a September to October kind of transition that is quite beautiful, honestly. So that's got to be really, really good feelings. I did notice on your post about it, though, you gave a shout out to Dynamic Bullies in Canada. who were sponsoring your coach's travel to Austin, and you credit them for having somebody to not only join you on this journey, but to help with the weight cut specifically. How did that come together, and when did they kind of get in touch? And was there a scenario in which your coach wasn't going to come?
Yeah, so basically originally there was like a bit of a mix-up, and I thought that my coach's travel was being covered. It was my mistake. I misread something. But then I found out like just a few days before we were gonna, like a week before we were gonna leave, that his travel wasn't covered. So then I was like, okay, well, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and so I'm just gonna be going alone. But obviously, it's like I've traveled alone to compete quite a bit. I do it when I need to. I'm not gonna miss a competition because of that, but it's it's a stressful experience. Anyone who competes knows it's stressful to compete, and on top of that, it was like a really big weight cut for me. But basically, these guys who run the company, they get private lessons from my professor, and my professor like had mentioned my situation, and they stepped in like at the last minute, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and they offered to pay for my coach's flight and his travel expenses. And so we were able to book him a flight that day, and I think we booked it like 2 days before we left. And honestly, the relief that like just coursed through my body that I wouldn't have to go like perform on this big stage like completely by myself and do this weight cut by myself. Like I can't thank them enough for offering that sponsorship.
Well, that's cool. And also, I'm a dog owner, so when I saw it was a dog-based thing, I thought, wait, they do that? Wait, hold on. How do I get in on this money too?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would immediately, I think I told my wife, I just go, yo, I got to get this racket going too. Like, how are we going to get people to support our dogs when I do this? Just, I'll shout out whatever I need to on the show. But what better combination than dogs, jiu-jitsu, and being able to cover your weight cut, I think is an important thing. Plus, as you mentioned, obviously the weight cut's there, but in some ways, not just the coaching, but the companionship that you have in these very, very difficult times, it really can't be overstressed. There's a whole reason that in MMA, corners are a huge part of the fight game themselves. So I get it. I was just glad that worked in your favor. So kudos for making that happen. When it's all said and done, you finished at who's number one. Do you have a moment of relief, or are you now already looking to the next thing? And if so, what is the next thing?
I mean, both, right? Like, I think I had a huge feeling of relief, mostly because I've just been, like I told you, like dreaming about going on who's number one and making my way up the ranks. So I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to perform well, because I knew that like a good performance at who's number one, usually like they reward that and they like keep inviting you back. So for me, it was like super important to like show them that I'm hungry. I fight for the submission, that I'm entertaining as a fighter. I really want to demonstrate all that to kind of ensure that they would like give me that call back. I want to be on this circuit. I want to climb my way up the ranks. So it was both, it was the relief, and then it was also like the hunger for like, okay, great. Now, like, the second, if they call me up with another opponent, like hopefully like higher ranked, so I can like make my way up the rankings, like that's perfect. Like I'm ready and I'm super pumped.
Beautiful. So having said that though, do we know what's happening next for you? Because I'm wondering if we need to talk to the dog sponsors to say like, hey, be prepared. She's about to go win something else pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, like right now I have my eyes set on the East Coast Trials for ADCC. And then after that, we'll see. I mean, that'll be my fourth competition in like a span of like 5 weeks. So I might take like, a couple of weeks just to like mellow out. And then, but I mean, in the end, like if I get a call from whoever, like I'm always ready and I'm always game. So.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm stoked that you're on the East Coast Trials. Obviously I still think it's criminal that does not result in an automatic bid, but I will tell you as a spectator and fan, you being in it makes me excited because I know that you don't give bad matches. So, no matter win or lose, I know we can expect something fun from you. So I'm excited to see that. I may roast you for being too polite on the show. I'm trying to tell everybody who's on our show within the next couple weeks that, like, yeah, if I'm saying stuff, just remember I'm on air for a marathon amount of time. So I don't even know what I'm saying at a certain point. But you've been so gracious with your time. We're going to start to wrap up right now. I do want to ask, do you have sponsors that you'd like to shout out? And I feel you should shout them out just to cover the bases, because I really want you to compete more. So if it means giving a few shout outs on a show like mine, I'm okay with that. So floor is yours. Go ahead and shout out anybody that you'd like to who helped you get ready and win and beast these last couple competitions.
Yeah, of course. So I definitely want to shout out my teams that I train out of, Brazilian top team in Montreal and West Island, as well as Mizu Studio. And then all my teammates, who do extra sessions with me. And then my sponsors, Hyperfly Canada. They're always sending me like the nicest gear, and it's great to be sponsored by someone who, like, when I get more gear, I'm always like, shit, this is sick, And then I also want to shout out my strength and conditioning coach, Mathieu. He's been super great, helping me feel strong at like whatever weight I'm at. And then also my physio, who keeps my broken body alive, Physiomentum. If anyone in the Montreal area needs a physio, they're the ones to see. And I think that's everyone. And for sure, in like 15 minutes, I'm going to realize I forgot someone and feel horrible. So I'm sorry to that person, whoever you are.
I mean, here's the thing. She just has to win again, and then she can come back on the show. And then when she wins, we'll definitely give her another opportunity to go ahead and just keep shouting out people until we keep getting more sponsors. But I have to tell you, super happy for you. Last year when we did our interview, just one of the nicest people that you can see do really, really amazing things. And there's nothing that makes me happier than when we can tune on any of these shows and see you have great matches. But I know for you personally, to make history as a 2-time champ, but a first-time champ on a brand new show. I hope that show does well, but you are now etched in another part of the history of that. So I wanted to make sure you were properly congratulated for that. And as well with your amazing performance at Who's Number One, which I assume you'll probably start climbing some ranks very, very quickly.
I hope so. I hope the right people are listening to this,
They probably are.
So
I'm going to guarantee you they aren't. That. They have their own shows that nobody listens to as well. So I'm pretty sure they won't be. But I can tell you, we know and we're friends with them. So if there's a lobby firm, I'm happy to be one of those voices that puts in a good word. So I want to thank you. I appreciate your time. Everybody go follow her. If you're not, you're going to be stupid and feel dumb when she goes to beast another competition soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure talking to you, like always.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with even more Grappling Hour. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Now, you're not going to want to go anywhere. Here's the reason why. What we're going to do now is we have seen one interview with one ADCC Trials winner. The rest of the interviews that you are going to see are going to be with the 6 other individuals who also won, and we're going to try to put them up daily for the next week or so. We're doing our best to schedule with everybody. We have some that are already in the can. I think you're really going to like them. And in the meantime, please do us a solid so that you know exactly when they're going to come up. Go ahead and give us a subscribe on our YouTube channel, because for the next month, if I see that you've subscribed on our channel, then I will do a toast in your honor. It's a nice thing that we're trying to do for our friends and our family who enjoy this show. So give us one. And if you have privacy settings on your YouTube page, just do us a solid. Just send me a DM with a screenshot that you followed us. It doesn't take much. I will make sure to give you a proper cheers on here. And if you've seen our fight companions, you know they can get pretty drunk. Anyway, my thanks to you. Give us a subscribe. Give us a like on all the major @Grappling Hour channels. I hope that you enjoyed this interview, and we're going to have a lot more. So do not go anywhere. Do not change the channel. Why don't you go see the next one right now? But in the meantime, it's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.